डे 2 ऑफ हिंदू एजुकेशन कॉन्फ्रेंस। अभी हम सब सरस्वती माता का ध्यान करेंगे। या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करः प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा। शुक्लां ब्रह्मविचारसारपहमाम् आद्यां जगद्व्यापिनी वीणापुस्तकधारिणीमभयदां जाड्यान्धकारापहां। हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधतीं पद्मासने संस्थितां वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां शारदां।
हम लोग आज का अपना पहला सेशन शुरू करने के लिए तैयार हैं। हमारे इस सेशन में आए हुए दो विशेष रूप से हमारे अतिथि माननीय भैया जी जोशी, सर कारवा राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ, माननीय श्री कृष्ण गोपाल जी, सर कारवा राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ, आपका मैं विशेष रूप से स्वागत करता हूं। और मैं आमंत्रित कर रहा हूं प्रोफेसर कपिल कपूर को इस सेशन को चेयर करने के लिए। प्रोफेसर कपिल कपूर कल ज़्यादातर आप लोगों में से ज़्यादातर लोग शाम के सेशन में थे और कपिल कपूर साहब का मैं परिचय कराऊं इसकी बहुत ज़्यादा आवश्यकता तो नहीं है क्योंकि ज़्यादातर लोगों का परिचय है, लेकिन फिर भी एक फॉर्मल परिचय आवश्यक होता है। इस नाते से प्रोफेसर कपिल कपूर इज़ नाउ चांसलर ऑफ महात्मा गांधी अंतर्राष्ट्रीय हिंदी विश्वविद्यालय वर्धा। He was former professor of English and Sanskrit studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He was dean and then pro-vice chancellor of JNU. He is the editor-in-chief of 11-volume Encyclopedia of Hinduism that has recently been published. Chief editor of the Sahitya Academy sponsored Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics, a UNESCO project that is under publication. So, Professor Kapoor will chair this session, and I will formally hand over to him to take care of the further asking other speakers to invite on the dais.
आज समय कल से ज़्यादा अच्छा है। कल लेट इवनिंग थी, आज सुबह का समय है। हमारे इस सेशन में 4 हमारे साथ विद्वान हैं। एक तो प्रोफेसर बलबीर तोमर जी, मैं उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि आप आइए प्लीज़ जी। नमस्कार जी, और बैठिएगा। ये चांसलर हैं NIMS जयपुर के। एंड फिर हमारे स्वामिनी प्रमानंद जी, नमस्कार जी, आइए प्लीज़। ये पूर्ण विद्या फाउंडेशन कोयम्बटूर की चीफ हैं। उनके तीसरे हैं प्रोफेसर रजनीश मिश्रा जी जेएनयू से हैं। अरे प्रोफेसर रजनीश मिश्रा जी हैं। और हमारे चौथे स्पीकर हैं श्री स्टीवन रूडोल्फ जी। श्री स्टीवन रूडोल्फ जी आ रहे हैं, प्लीज कम, बैठिएगा। ये को फाउंडर हैं जीव इंस्टीट्यूट फरीदाबाद में जो है उसके, और आई मेट यू लास्ट टाइम ऑल्सो व्हेन आई थिंक जी। हमारा सेशन अभी 9:45 शुरू होके 11:15 तक है। अच्छी चीज़ें थोड़ी थोड़ी डोज में ही होती हैं, तो हम कोशिश करेंगे कि सब लोगों को अच्छा टाइम मिले। तो मैं इसको निर्देशित करना है या इसका ध्यान करना है, मैं 2 शब्द पहले सिर्फ बोलूँगा कि हमारा जो I think I was told yesterday I should speak in English because our specific issue was curriculum innovation and development. Curriculum, of course, it's a major part of education, and today we have a very nice topic here: high quality, affordable education for all. This is very important because education in India at all levels is partitive, and it's some small section of the Indian people have access to the best and access everywhere, and a large section of Indian people do not have access, sometimes do not have access at all, and if they have access, if they go, they have to leave it. The reasons are many, partly economic. If you are poor, you can't go to the best institution. If you do not know English, you can't go to the higher institutions of learning. And if you are from regions, distant regions of this vast country, then you cannot go to premier institutions which are mostly located in metropolitan cities. You cannot come and travel there. So there are many reasons. And there is so education in India promotes elitism. It divides India. It divides India into those who have received this education and those who have not received this education. As I said yesterday, India is 2 nations in many, many ways. And one of them is this, that they have small section of people who have received good education. By good education, we mean this alien, English instrumented, English-based education, instrumented. And they have received this education, they become alienated. In fact, our education creates islands. And these are islands of institutions, islands of people, and most of the people who are at the top in the country today, at the top, whether they are in business or they are in education or they are in bureaucracy, they all belong to a particular class. I'm not a Marxist, but I think as a human being, as a person who loves the people, sometimes I say I love democracy, but I hate people, but that's not true. I love people also. And when you see the conditions, you feel that there is a kind of a self-perpetuation of a class of people through this system. So it needs the affordable education for all. That's very important. Affordable, high quality, affordable education for all. But since the top, I think we will keep this in mind as our overriding directive, but we'll also speak about how it is to be done. And I think one of the major means of doing this would be to have a proper curriculum. And the curriculum is a vast term. It includes disciplines, it includes mediums of education, it includes the high and large variety of institutions, all these things, because it will become part of the curriculum. Of course, the general goals and objectives and all those things will be there. So I will not, Abhi, right now make much stand between our speakers and maybe if there is some 5 minutes at the end, I will sum up and say a few words. So may I now request Professor Balbir Tomarji to make his presentation.
Professor Dr. Kapoor and my all dear respected friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody. As today's topic is to me is a very difficult topic. The given is the innovation curriculum to achieve excellence in higher education. It's very topic that will change the whole higher education, and I speak in 10 to 12 minutes. It's very difficult, and same time the underline is this: affordable, high quality education for all. So these are the two things I will summarize try to summarize into maybe in 10 to 12 minutes. So the things we are presenting here, to me, each and every line, we can speak and we can write the books, then only we can change the curriculum, but we don't have much time, so I'm going through. First question comes, why do we need curriculum? The curriculum is needed because to increases the accountability among teachers and learners, facilitates teaching and learning, helps in evaluation, accreditation, certification, and credit transfer and equivalence. So they are declared curriculum, means what we assume the student has to learn. Taught curriculum, that is what we assume and what we think the teacher has to teach. The learned curriculum, that means the student has to learn. And this very important point is I always say, for the getting excellence in higher education is the hidden curriculum. I will speak later on this, but hidden curriculum means since all classes by and large heterogeneous in relations to learning abilities, it is found that certain part of curriculum remains untouched, and in certain cases, teacher addresses such curriculum in special classes for high-profile learners. What is in practice? Number one practice is that the curriculum design and development. Number one practice is that it is a main practice which we do. A set of courses are identified purposefully to achieve certain competencies among learners. Practice 2 for the development of curriculum is the curriculum adaptation. A set of courses and their contents are being specified and practiced elsewhere, and host institutions want to modify from minimum to maximum extent to meet out their requirement. And third practice is the curriculum adaptation. The host institutions borrow curriculum from an institution of national and international importance, repute, and implement it with approval from the institutions from which it has been borrowed. Now, what should be our model? What is desirable for our country? Or we can say, how could higher education institutions build up their academic structure, foundation more efficiently? I will say we have to be included all the three processes, and seeing the economic structure, our huge Indian land and our scenario of the India, considering all these things and adopting all these three procedures, we have to adopt and make our curriculum in the higher education. The goal set by our Honorable Shri Narendra Modi ji's government is that skill-based education. That means education in higher education and should be skill-based. Skill-based. Second thought and the motion which Dr. Narendra Modi ji has given is scaling up competencies. Means we have to scale the competencies in our learners, in society, and the people around. And third is speed and pacing the development goals. And these are the three main focus of our government, headed by the Narendra Modi ji, and I think this is absolutely very clear to me. And for this, if we achieve these goals, that means India will be one of the most powerful and one of the most developed world in education as well as every field of the area. And for achieving this target, the brain of our Honorable Prime Minister has spoken. We always say Satyameva Jayate. Very nice. It is the Indian symbol. And he has spoken to achieve the highest goal in education, excellence in education and affordable education, that Shramameva Jayate. Shramameva Jayate. So by this, how we can achieve these three goals? I fully agree. The skill-based education, scaling up competency, and speed and paid development, and with Shramameva Jayate, this is how we can achieve now. These three things with Shramameva Jayate. I'm coming through. Now, if we go over ancient days, why we do shine well. We are very shine well in the ancient days. I have no time to tell, everybody knows. Because of our ideas of Bharatiya education system, realizing self, body, mind and spirit, idealistic thoughts, pragmatic actions, naturalistic environment, morality and character-based Parashvara, holistic human development, unity in diversity, cohesiveness and Vasudhaivam Kutumbakam. ये हमारा पुराना था जिसकी वजह से we shined very well. And now हम ये कहें कि हम shine very well थे, तो ये कहना मेरी ठीक नहीं होगा, लेकिन हम अपने दिल में सोचें तो हम ये कहीं न कहीं तो कहेंगे हम बहुत शाइन पहले करते थे. अब तो मैं उसको ये मॉडिफाई करूंगा कि जो हम शाइन करते थे अब भी कर रहे हैं, चलिए इसको मानते हैं. उसके लिए हम क्या कहेंगे? To remain sustained our excellence in higher education, what we were, we have to see this cycle. The most important point in any community, for any nation to develop as a whole, is to increase its human development index. And this human development index is correlated with GDP, gross development product. And this is the EGD. So, and all these three are, you can say, nucleated, boosted up by the excellence in higher education and innovative curriculum. For example, if we only increase GDP, that means per capita income be increased, we can make our country prosperous. But the country will not have human index high, human development high. They are two different things. But our idea is to achieve the human development index very high, because this includes more life expectancy, literacy and per capita income. That means when our target should be HDI to increase, this will automatically cover the GDP and the literacy. The literacy is not a part of GDP. So we should not always speak of GDP, we should speak of HDI. That means itself includes the GDP. So our curriculum will be such that it should increase HDI, though all these three are interlinked. So achieving this, I could say a theoretical model of this will be a curriculum, will be learner-friendly education delivery. Main target of this learner-friendly education delivery is employable career-based training and education. The main goal of our career, our education, our higher education will be employable career-based training and education. And this will fulfill our country's demand. We will increase HDI intern, GDP, interlink, and we will be getting more these 3 points, and these are the 3 criteria by which the country said that they are developed or not developed. So at one end, we want to become economically strong. Second, we want to become more literate. And third, we also like to say we are a developed country. For that, the innovation and excellence higher education is very important, I can say with this. So I'm coming again. Our education system will be employable, career-based training system. And when we will fulfill our own things, then what we'll do? Because everybody knows that in 2020, India will be strongest nation because have the highest number of the young population. इतना होगा हमारे पास young population brain कि हम अपनी चीज़ों को पूरा करने के बाद, employable बनाने के बाद, हमारी सलाह है, we'll go outstanding, we can say outsourcing human resources. We will export these brilliant outsourcing human resources. So our curriculum excellence will be a mixture of idealism, naturalism, pragmatism, realism, extensionism, constructivism, reconstructivism, and humanism. So when the students comes out, he should have employable career-based training, and same time he should be humanism. So he should think of self. First self, then family, then nation, and then the universe. Vasudham Kutumbakaram. He means to think of the universe as a whole. As Dr. Kapoor told that the affordable is very important. I have spoken because this slide, the last slide, was the main nucleus of the excellence in curriculum. Idea is that however India is a poor country, we can say growing country, having the vast diversity in the fields, communication नहीं है हमारे पास, roads नहीं है, हम स्कूल में बच्चे नहीं पहुंच पाते हैं, हम पढ़ाना चाहते हैं, तो उसके लिए हमें क्या करना है, रास्ता बताने के लिए बताया गया था. I'll say for this roadmap for innovative curriculum to achieve excellence in higher education is information ICT based education is only goal to achieve the excellence in higher education. That education will be reaching in every part of the corner. So next point is that it's most important, as I told, SIT means everywhere through the high technology, and this should be maybe a very high-end cutting technology. And role of e-memory is very important, which will seek our paradigm shifting in cognitive functioning and information processing. We say when we read nowadays that we can think of what our knowledge our youngsters are getting, they are getting through a lot of internet and computers. So I personally believe, researchers, they believe that there are two memory systems in the brain. One is the old system, which is our brain, and second is newer system we call e-memory, and e-memory comes to e-learning and mobile learning. So I will say that this should be a mobile system. I'll take only 2 minutes. And the most important is the 4 arms of the curriculum are, number 1, it should be anytime, anywhere. Second, learning models. And third, anti-transition progress exists. That means he can be promoted anytime. And external engagement and partnership with external people who are more developed. And next important point, our curriculum should be the competency-based education, employmentship, and promotion of the family and society and statesmanship. The one thing I would like to express, then why we are not achieving this, we are now defeating. For achieving this target, we should honor more UG level honor courses. And second is the vacation-based courses. If you apply these 2 things, we can achieve. And third thing is that there should be a discrepancy between the school education and higher education system should be. Then my recommendation comes in 1 minute. The curriculum stands to be formist statutory requirement. Shram-based Jayate is the key role we have to achieve with this thing. HDI is the main system. And learner-friendly, ICT-based curriculum, openness. And last is that as I am learning, I am saying since yesterday that Hindu should be Nirbhik Hindu. Here I will say a Hindu should be Nirbhik Hindu. So our curriculum, a Hindu curriculum should be Nirbhik curriculum, and it should not forget our ancient ideas. That means ये गंगा हमारे सूर्य और हम कहते हैं अच्छे दिन आने वाले हैं, सूर्योदय हो रहा है, और एजुकेशन में भी with this model we can have the अच्छे दिन in higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. I should have given the introduction to him, to wonderful professor. He is a doctor, medical doctor, and he founded this medical university in Jaipur, and he is the founder chancellor. He has made some very good points, both debatable and non-debatable, in the sense that I think it's better that things are opened out. Some of the things that are admirable, you see, is the agreement with the goals of education, the quality and for all. And sir has said that one important point with which I think we can all agree, we will all agree, is the human index along with the GDP. You see, Oliver Goldsmith saying that ill fares the land to hastening ills a prey, where wealth accumulates but men decay. So men must not decay. If they decay, then you have the newspapers today, GDP going up, corruption also going up. So we got to keep the two together. That is a very nicely made point, sir. And you also said employable. I think what you mean is that we should enable people to earn their livelihood, not necessarily through employment. No. Not necessarily through employment, but livelihood. Otherwise, it is Macaulay, you see, make everybody a clerk and a white-collar job. And
yes,
right, sir. No, I understand. We agree with you. We are not disagreeing. And then reach to reach the masses, ICT based. That's again a controversial issue. It's possible, but it has many problems. There's many problems. As there is, our two ladies from CBSE are sitting there, who designed a 2-year course in Indian knowledge traditions. And the great problem of giving in the course book itself sites and other things, and the question that they faced was, how would the people in the remote corners of India, poor people, where there is not even electricity for 20 hours, what will they do? So those are there, but then it's ultimately maybe ultimately this we'll need to do. Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And may I now invite Swamini ji. I will just give a brief. She has 4 areas in which she has excelled and in which she has made important contributions. She is a global peace worker. She's worked for peace, and she has been working in climate change, and she has also worked in inter-civilizational dialogues. She has participated in many dialogues, and she represents the Vedic tenets of the sacred civilization, and to prove it all, she lives on the bank of Ganga. So I think, Swamini ji, please. Yes, that's it. Vedic tenets, yes.
Om Sitamakaranishanam Shubhravastram Tinetram Karadita Kalashodrit Sotphala Bhityabhishtam Vidhi Harihara Rupam Setukoti Rajushtam Kalitasita Dukulam Janhavim Tam Namami Namami Gange Tava Pada Pankajam Sura Surairvandita Divya Rupam Bhuktim Cha Muktim Cha Dadasi Nityam Bhavanusarena Sada Narana Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskar to you all. It gives me great joy to stand here before you because a platform like this, I know how rare it is to come by. I may have done work in other fields, but education has been something very dear to my heart. And over the years, over the decades, I think I find whatever small or big contribution, however you define it, it is really not a contribution to society. I think it's part of my own inner journey. And that's really how I see education. In our Vedic model, it is said, Dve vidye veditavye paracha aparacha. Knowledge is twofold. One is called paravidya, the other is apara. Paravidya is that knowledge in which one gains access to knowing who you are. Who is this soul who's out there to know the world? Aparavidya is that which describes the various disciplines of knowledge of the creation. This is one civilization that has focused on both, that has seen the place of both. Knowledge was never declared as secular at any given time in our civilization. In fact, knowledge was always talked about in our country as the most sacred of all. We began this session with Saraswati Vandana not for nothing. And to me, that Saraswati flows as Ganga's Swarupini Ma for all of us. The whole civilization, if there is two models of civilizations that declare success in human life, well, I would say, broadly speaking, one is that talks about human achievements, human success in terms of material accomplishments, material goals achieved. If there is another civilization that distinctly declared that material success, material prosperity is not the hallmark of human living, human success, and that is the second civilization which declares the soul's evolution as being the hallmark of human life, a successfully lived human life. Atmanam aviditva asman lokat preti sah kripanaha. The one who leaves this world without having any clue about who you are, he is a kripana, he is a kanjus. He's a stingy guy who never really used the intellect for which he was given. This is what the Upanishads declare. And therefore, there is a lot going on all over the planet. Everyone is talking about crisis, the climate crisis, the economic crisis, the political crisis, the social crisis. I don't even understand half of these crises, what they all mean. The cultural crisis everywhere, not just in India. Crisis brings fear. Crisis grips your heart, suffocates you. I really would not like to call this a time of crisis. It is a time of great transformation. The whole planet is undergoing an evolutionary shift. We are undergoing a time of great transformation. There needs to be an awakening. It's not about just a change of a system that we are addressing here. It's a change of consciousness of the people involved. Human beings have states of consciousness. If I'm driven by dissatisfaction, displeasure, greed, competition, if that is where my consciousness sits, yes, you're going to see an external manifestation in society, a society which has the killer instinct, highly competitive, highly what you call aggressive. But if your state of consciousness abides in a place of peace, abides in a place of harmony, then what comes forth is nothing but embrace, compassion, love. And whatever system you pick up after that is going to be guided by these basic principles, which really is where every human heart belongs, is it not? This is a country. We are all Rishi Putras and Putris. These were not ordinary souls, these were souls who knew where their consciousness should sit, where should it belong. They were people who were inspired from the higher and brought to the ecology of the land a spirituality. In that spirituality, there was a owning up of their higher self, the infinite self. India today needs the spiritual ecology's reawakening. The Hindu ecology was the spiritual ecology. A reawakening, a realigning to that calls for certain insights, and the person who sits and pens these principles that have been given to us for centuries together. You cannot be someone who pens this down if the transformation process is not kicked in your own very life. Well, as a simple sadhvi who sits on the banks of Ganga, what else can I do? I have tied my hands down. I don't really belong, so to speak. My own culture has put me elsewhere. But then there was not a day of my life I lost without something burning in me, seeking, calling for this transformation. And well, we have before us, how do we click these things? I have no clue. This is a program which we have put together, a 2 years course material for colleges. For me to receive the sacred heritage of my land, I need a process of self-purification. I need to be on track of self-evolution, and only then will I be able to absorb the higher principles of life. And so the first book is called Indian Ethos and Self-Transformation. The second book is called Introduction to Hindu Civilization. We have over the years, the next slide is a course material for over 2 decades. We designed this, it's 24 books, standard 1 to standard 12. I thought it was, when I wrote these books, I used to envision these books in every school system in India. I saw this in every family, not just Hindu family, any family that has born and brought up in this sacred land, who wishes to know about the indigenous civilization of this country. Well, these are a series of books that is going to give you a glimpse into it. It's 24 books. A sample is sitting behind in the hall. Please take a look at it. They are not just academic books. They are user-friendly books taught through playway method of instruction. Next. Well, my work has not stopped. Somehow, the world seems to be moving so fast that I was told, Amma, these books are not good enough. Even when we invite you, you carry suitcases of books wherever you go. This is not the way the world has changed. You need to go digital. And so here I am, sitting on those same banks of Gangaji, inspiring me to do digital programs, and we are launching a series of courses on the heritage, spiritual heritage of India, beginning January, for children, for young people, for women courses, and for adults, looking at the Vedantic tenets of oneness and harmony as the foundation on which these programs are going to bring about this so-called soft revolution of the heart, the spiritual revolution that our country so much seeks through education. Thank you all. Om Tat Sat. Is it possible to, yes. Just as an afterthought, mind you, all my programs are available for villages. In Tamil Nadu, 40,000 children are studying in 1,000 villages, Purna Vidya. Every year, I have this entire package in Hindi, as well as in Tamil, and of course, English. Thank you all.
Just wanted to give a couple of pieces of information about Ammaji. In her pre-sannyas years, she got a degree in microbiology from New York University, and her brother, Shri Dheeraj Chaitanya ji, is also a graduate from the same university.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor, and both of them, after they got their education, they got associated with Pujya Swami Dayanand ji, and after that, they actually developed what she mentioned, a series of books, and the Hindu community outside Bharat has immensely benefited from their works. So I got a chance to meet Ammaji in Uttar Kashi, and I said, oh, I didn't know that you are the creator of these books. She was very silent, and that's how I learned. So I said, you should definitely come to our educational conference. I mean, you are an asset, and we don't know about you. This is a matter of shame. Another thing I wanted to share is, in last year's Hindu Educational Conference, we had promised that we will develop a college-level course on Introduction to Hindu Civilization. Because whatever we are reading in our pre-college years, honestly, that is not useful at all. So at college level, maybe we can provide some corrective steps. When I saw all that material of Purna Vidya, I requested Ammaji to create a book on Introduction to Hindu Civilization. In a period of 4 months, she worked hard, and we have that book here. I will request our Pujya Bhaiya ji to come and is pustak ka anavaran kare. And the request to all the educational community is, kindly use these texts. We are now in process of generating material so that you can use it in your universities and campuses, so that we are not doing, we can actually use these things.
greatly contributed for value education.
उसको
I wish that you put it in YouTube and other places.
We also have one more book. अभी कुछ भैया जी अभी आपको फिर से हम कष्ट देंगे. We have Dr. Girdhari Lal Bhan here, who is a very senior and respected member of the Hindus outside Bharat. He is the president of Vishwa Hindu Parishad of UK and very closely associated with the Hindu community in UK for a very large number of years. He is a very gentle, soft-spoken person. बहुत धीरे से बोलते हैं. और one of the pioneering books which they have developed, and that was developed a couple of decades back, was Hindu Dharma. And that book, Akila ji and others, they had talked about it yesterday. It is being used across the whole world as a reference material. Now VHP UK has come out with another book, and it is 16 Sanskars in the Life of Hindu. Okay, so he talked about this particular book today. The authors of this book are Dr. Girdhari Lal Bhan, of course, Dr. Shivendra Sinha. It has been edited by Professor Prinja, a nuclear physicist, and Professor Chandragupta Bhargav. It's a publication, once again, of Vishwa Hindu Parishad of UK. All proceeds for this book, they don't go to the authors, but they go to charitable purposes. I browsed through the books. It has been blessed by Pujya Swamiji and Swami Satyamitranand Giriji. It has a very detailed, references, very powerful glossary. All the technical terms, dharma, they are mentioned in Roman script and also Devanagari script, so that when our children pronounce these words, they are able to pronounce them correctly. Because when you write it in Roman, even with diacritical and all that, people do tend to. It has 23 chapters, very easy to read. It's structured for easy to, for children of little age and also for people who are not necessarily academicians. So that book is here. And आप कुछ बताना चाहेंगे इसके बारे में? So sorry for this little diversion, but I thought this is very important, and we'll continue the proceedings.
Within the framework of curriculum. I think Swamini ji has been introduced by her great work, but it's still my duty to thank her for all the wonderful ideas she has shared with us. And I think one thing which struck me was her idea that between the Paravidya and the Aparavidya, Paravidya is for self-realization, and for that you need a transformation of consciousness. And unless one has that transformation of consciousness, in fact, that, according to her, applies to almost any learning. If you want to learn at a certain level, kind and deeply affecting yourself, then you have to have a transformed consciousness, a higher level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Swamini ji. May I now request the next speaker, Professor Rajneesh Mishra ji, who is teaching Sanskrit apart from other things in JNU, linguistics and other things. And he is a scholar of Buddhism, and he is associate editor in the Encyclopedia of Hinduism, and he is assistant editor in the Encyclopedia of Indian Poetics. So he has been, we've been working together for quite some years now. So Rajneesh Mishra ji, please.
Namaskar. Respected chairperson of the session, my guru, Professor Kapil Kapoor ji, respectable and very learned audience, and my co-panelists here. This is really a difficult task to introduce knowledge traditions of Bharat, and within such a short time, it is really difficult. I would like to begin with a very popular shloka from Raghuvansham by Kalidas. Vagartha vivasam priktau Vagartha Pratipattaye Jagatah Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameshwaru. In this verse, our great poet Kalidas has prayed Shiva and Parvati, who are like associated like word and meaning. Word never leaves without meaning, and so is true for the meaning. According to Amarkosh, that is a versified dictionary, I think only one in the world in Sanskrit, Amarkosh has recorded a word, Sarvagya, one who knows everything, know all. And this is applied to, conventionally, to Bhagavan Shiva and Mahatma Buddha. Okay? And here lies the secret of this knowledge tradition, because the term Bharat is interpreted in different ways. One is, of course, descendant of Bharat, so tasya patyam Bharat, and an pratyay is attached to that, and it becomes Bharat. So this is genealogical in a sense, but etymologically also you have another meaning that pertains to this knowledge-centered civilization, and that is Bha means light, illumination, and Rat permeated with or in. Another meaning is also there. Bharat also refers to Mahabharat. So these are the knowledge texts. These two epics, particularly Ramayana and Mahabharata, are not just literary compositions, they are the knowledge texts. They are our itihas also. As we can see, there are two major sources of our knowledge traditions of Bharat. Agam, that is Tantra. The popular name for this is Tantra, and Nigam is Veda. But later on, we see in our tradition that Agam is more popular, and it includes Veda also. And to some extent, these two are very, very important sources of our knowledge traditions. Then you see, what kind of knowledge? Knowledge for what? This is the question which the culture has raised and meditated upon. The question is that of the self, knowing one's own self. If we do not know our own self, how reliable is our knowledge about the others? So the focus is always to know our own self. And that's why the question, the kind of question, this is Mundaka Upanishad, such questions are rarely asked in other cultures. And the question is, Kasmin no bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. What is that having known which everything is known? This is such a central question. And the answer given is just our Swamiji has referred to, Dve Vidye Veditavye. There are two disciplines, Vidya, two disciplines, Para and Apara. The remarkable point in this classification is that this is horizontal, not a vertical classification. So Para and Apara both are equally required. And in Apara, all Shastras are included, including Veda. Veda, we'll come to that point also. And Para is that which is totally experiential, where knowledge is transformed into our experience of the self. So, and this is the culture that gives highest priority to knowledge, as Bhagavad Gita says in 4th chapter 38th verse, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram mihi vidyate. Nothing like, there is nothing like knowledge purifies everything. There is nothing more competent purifier than this knowledge. And sa vidya ya vimuktaye, knowledge is that which liberates us from our narrow self. And again, Abhinav Gupta, a very renowned philosopher, tantric, grammarian philosopher of 10th, 11th century Kashmir, in his Tantrasar says, Ihgyanam moksha karanam. This knowledge is the primal cause of emancipation or liberation. And what is liberation? This is not mysterious. It says that moksho hinam nayavanya swarup prathanam hisah. Moksha is nothing other than expanding yourself, freeing ourselves of these narrow bondages or narrow or veiling elements. Then knowledge traditions of Bharat. I am quoting a very suitable quote as taught by my teacher, Professor Kapil Kapoor ji here. It is the quote from Pandit Bhagwat Shastri ji from Pune. Bharatiya Jnana Parampara Sanatan Ganga Pravah. So it is like the continuous everlasting flow of the river Ganga. And it is Sanatan, it is given, it is always there. It is not created, it is not artificial. It is always there. Whether we know it or not, that's another thing. It doesn't depend on us also. So Sanatan Ganga Pravah, and it is Ganga. As we know in our culture, Ganga is not just a river. So lots of cultural elements are associated with that, and sacredness is there. And Pravah, that means it is never irrelevant. It is continuing, it is always fresh, just like the flow of the river. It is not stagnant, it is continuing, and it pertains to all time and all space. So there is no question of relevance or irrelevance. Then another is Bhartrihari, our grammarian philosopher of 5th, 6th century. He says that this universal thought which this country created is Sarvavad Avirodhini. It is not in opposition or contradiction to any other thought system. And then in his text, Vakyapadiye, in the 2nd chapter, last verse almost. He says that pragya vivekam lavte bhinnairagam darshanai ki yadva shakyam mannetum swatarkam anudhavata. That mind acquires critical acumen when it is exposed to other systems of thought. So that tells us about the intellectually confident India. Yesterday we heard about the invincible Hindu. I think we need to add one more, intellectually confident Hindu. That is the need of the time. And then there are several characteristics that it is language is central to our thinking, because language is not just a means of communication, it is a means of cognition. Without language, thinking process cannot take place. And it is both language, it can be used, or language has twofold identities. It is mantra as well as prapanch, where knowledge reveals truth, or it relates to ourself. It is mantra as well as, and when it covers or veils reality, it is prapancha. Another characteristic is from difference to non-difference, and that can be seen in several places, in several disciplines. Like we have a concept of non-duality in a number of disciplines. Like in grammar, you have Shabda Brahma. In music, you have Nada Brahma. In philosophy, it is Para Brahma, and like that. So the mind transcends difference. It is not denial of difference, but it transcends difference. And that's why Abhinavgupta says, Shikharastha Gyanavat, the way a person perceives the world while located on the top of the mountain. He doesn't see differences, he sees one reality. It is like that. And then it is Vada Parampara, that is disputation, tradition of disputation, Purva Paksha and Uttar Paksha. This is how our Shastras have been created. Purva Paksha is translated generally as opponent's view, and Uttar Paksha, that is the exponent's view. So in contemporary context, the West is our potential Purva Paksha today. So we have to address to the issues raised in the West. And then there is a shared vocabulary of thought in a number of disciplines. And finally, it is neti, going beyond. That is an incessant quest for truth. So this is how the typology goes on. I need not read all these things. That is very technical. So para, apara, shastraka, various parameters are applied to classify Indian knowledge disciplines. Prabhu Sammit, Suhrida Sammit, Kanta Sammit. Another typology is given by Panini, Drishta, Prokt, Upagyat, Vyakhyan, and Krita. Shruti, Smriti, Kavya. Purusharth Chatushta can also be one of the parameters. Our Shastras relate to Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. And then Paurushya and Apaurushya. These are the knowledge disciplines. Vangmay, permeated in language, is of two kinds, Shastra and Kavya. Shastra is again divided into two, Paurushya and Apaurushya. So three Vedas, Trayi, and fourth Atharva Ved, and related disciplines. And then you have Paurushya Shastras, 18 Puranas, Anvikshaki, that is the 6 systems of logic, 2 schools of Mimamsa, Purva and Uttar Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa, and Uttar Mimamsa is also popularly known as Vedanta, 18 Smritis. Then 14 knowledge disciplines. This is expected from everyone to know them, and these are the lists given there. If you add 4 more, they become 18 Vidyasthana, and there are several commentary traditions. What next? Important is to learn, preserve, and disseminate. These are knowledge texts, and knowledge texts belong to them who study them, learn them, understand them. Otherwise, we'll lose all this great tradition. Learn even without purpose. This is the Shruti, Brahmanen Nishkaranena. Knowledge is not acquired only with a purpose, even without purposeless. So this should be our duty, and that's why one of the Upanishads says, Swadhyayana Pramada. Don't dissociate yourself from the self-study. It is not that everything can be covered in the curriculum and all. It should be our duty to just one piece of information that we have been for last 4 or 5 months we have been engaged in creating curriculum for college level students, particularly in engineering and medical sciences. And we are going to present this. The book, the course book is under preparation, and within 6 months from now, I hope it will be complete, and we'll be presenting it before the AICTE for approval. And this is how it is done. Thank you. Namaskar.
Well, thank you very much, Rajneesh ji. I have been listening to his comprehensive clarities ever since he was a student. And he has the ability to focus on some things very clearly. He took up Swaminiji's para para and gave this interpretation of that and focused on knowledge, jnana. Jnana, distinction, jnana and vidya. Jnana is transformed into vidya. And then vidyas have shastras. Shastra is from shasa dhatu, which means to teach. Once you have a domain of knowledge, jnana is integral, and then you have vidya, which is disciplines, and to teach vidya, you have the shastras. And we have powerful linked tradition in all these things. And he's again, like I think Swaminiji also made that point. The fundamental question that is the goal of para jnana is who am I? As a question which everyone faces. Some people face once in a lifetime, particularly when they are growing old, and some people fail it from the beginning, like Shukadeva, that who am I? Now, there is a fundamental question. And even, Carlyle, in the Sartre, he says that we often ask ourselves this question. Answering that question is education, and acquiring the answer and making it a part of yourself is knowledge, jnana. I think that's a very good point. And I think he talked about the character of this knowledge and gave many dimensions of that. Then he gave typologies of knowledge, and he ended by saying that what we all need to know, I think one more point, Purushartha and Jnana, that's very important. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, the words are so common that when you start using them, people say, "Tune phir pravachan shuru kar diya." They're common words. But they're very strong, and they are not only for India or Hindus, they are for the world. Every human being, wants the realization of righteousness, material well-being, fulfillment of desires, and freedom from all that. Okay? So that is the point, and then he is finally by saying the important thing is to disseminate, learn. That's where curriculum and other things come in. Thank you very much. May I now request our friend Rudolf ji to come and speak. I will give a very brief introduction to our friend here. He is the co-founder, as I said, of the Jiva Foundation, and they are devoted to preparing educational leaders, and in the world's and involved with the World Summit Award of the UNESCO project also. And this is also, am I right, that something to do with medical Ayurveda also. So very important dimension, medicine, all our aims and all that, they are devoid of Ayurveda. So the importance of Ayurveda, they've been cultivating it. Thank you very much. Please come.
My fellow panelists, Professor Tomarji, Swamini Paramanandaji, and Professor Mishraji, and of course Sri Nachiket Tiwariji, Hindu Bhayon aur Behnon. It gives me great pleasure to stand in front of you today and to have this opportunity to be on such an august panel of invincible Hindus, intellectually capable Hindus, of which I would like to consider myself one of them. Okay, good. Because I've learned in my 20 years that I've been living in India that I understand implicitly. I hear a lot of apologies for use of this word Hindu, but I've understood implicitly what it actually means. And I found no trouble in associating myself as a Hindu. In fact, when I came to India, my parents were very worried that, have you converted? Have you changed your religion? I said, no, I've just accepted Hindu Dharma. I've just added it to myself, to who I am. And it made sense to me, all the tenets and the values that I hold dear, of being compassionate, of being upstanding, of being someone who's a member of a world and global community. The concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam made imminent sense to me. I have been working with the Jiva Institute. I'm a co-founder, where we are working with education. We are working with Ayurveda. You must have heard of Jiva Ayurveda, and Dr. Partap Chauhan, who's a colleague of mine. Dr. Satyanarayan Das, who is in Vrindavan, one of the leading scholars in Indian philosophy. Rishipal Chauhanji, who's right here, you can just raise his hand, who's the leader of Jiva Institute. Trying to revive traditional Indian culture and sciences in a modern context. I grew up in America, which is what I was told was the greatest country in the world, and in many ways is. I also learned about the Purusharth, Dharma, Arth, Kam, Moksha, and found out in time that we're really good in two things, Arth and Kam. We know how to make money, and we know how to enjoy it. But I also found out that these Purusharth, all four of them, are like tires on, they're like char paiyan hai gaadi mein. Aur kebal do hi hai, the car is going to fall over to the side, which is what's happened to our country after some time. We've gone up, we've traveled for some time, but our gaadi now wo kharab ho gaya hai. So we have a problem we have to deal with. What do we need in America? What do we need in the West? I was just in France. It's the same thing. We don't need more information or knowledge about Arth and about Kam. We need the information about Dharma and about Moksha. These are the things that are missing. And it so happens, India's great fortune, luck, or whatever you want to call it, is that that information is here. There is no other country in the world that has such incredible depth of knowledge in these two areas, and I've been swimming in this ocean for 20 years. And I, like you, Swamini, I share that passion. I feel it. I want to bring this to everyone. I also want to bring it to Indians because I find out that most Indians wo us taraf mein dekh rahe, west ki taraf mein. वो गंगा चल रहे, आप अपने सामने नहीं देख रहे, नहीं जानते कि ये ज्ञान चल रहे उसके सामने. But what I don't want to happen, and I see this happening, even foreigners are coming here, they're taking it more seriously and more intensely than Indians are. Even Ayurvedic doctors, they're coming from the West and they're seeing this, some Ayurvedic doctors drinking chai. And they're saying, "Aap Ayurvedic doctor hai, aap chai pi rahe ho?" And these Ayurvedic doctors get very uncomfortable. They think, "Oh, main chai pi raha hu, kya baat hai?" It's with this intensity that the West is dying, starving for this. So Hindu or Hindustan is a place. It's a place. It's a place wherever these values exist, and we must make this international. And yes, in our school that we have, Jiva Public School, we were the first school in India to have an internet connection. And I was going fast in that way to try to bring technology to our school, but I decided that that's not what we need. What we need is, as Swamini rightly calls, the Paravidya, the self-knowledge. Years ago, the way knowledge used to exist, the way education existed was through Guru and Gurukul, where there was somebody looking after the internal needs of every single child. Looking after the needs of every child, their spiritual needs as well. This is missing since the British education system came here and became a factory-based system of education. It used to be just 5 or 10 children with that guru who found out what kind of nature this child has. Kis tarah ki bhav hai. What is that nature that every child has? That when Professor Tomarji speaks of career-centric or career-based education, this comes back to a simple principle from Gita, where even Arjuna is there standing on the battle of Kurukshetra and says that I can't fight against my guru. I can't fight against Dronacharya. I can't fight against Dada Bhishma. I'll become sadhu and go in the jungle. It's better. I want job change. And Krishna laughs at him, right? He says that you can't. He says, "Apne khoon mein hai. Ab kshatriya hai. You're a warrior. It's your nature. You have to fight according to your nature." So even when we talk about skills-based education or technology, this is all one side. We have to come to the basic principles of what is the nature of every child. And we've done that research. We've looked in Gita, we've looked in Manusmriti, all of the Vedas. We've come up with methodologies to help our children know who they are, what they are, and then how they'll get all those other things will come automatically. They don't need to teach you. They have Facebook. They have Google. They already know technology and those kind of things. They don't need it in the curriculum. But this is what we need. You can go to the next slide. So in our school, yes, back. I'll manage it, I think, from here. Multiple Natures is our first program we run with our children, where every child understands what kind of qualities he has: protective nature, an educative nature, an administrative nature, creative, healing kind of nature, an entertaining nature, and so on. We look at 9 types of natures of each child and 8 different types of intelligences. And based on this matrix, we figure out what their qualities are and which type of career they should go into. It is the first school in the world that is doing this, and there are hundreds of other schools throughout the country that are also using this, and also throughout the world. We are spreading it through our website, multiplenatures.com. Please do check it out. There's a beautiful test there that anybody can take, professionals as well, and find out what their natures are and what their careers are, where they should go. Our second amazing program we have is called Dincharya Ka Niyam. This is like Aam Ki Baat. Every person in India knows that you must follow Dincharya if you want to be healthy. And all of our children make their Dincharya, they make their schedules, their timetables, even on weekends, even on holidays. They know they have to get up. They know that they have to touch the ground, touch feet of their parents. They have to go through their morning routine, go to the bathroom, drink a glass of water, etc., and go through their entire routine. And it is this Dincharya that keeps our children disciplined. There is Dharam. Of the Dharam Arka Moksha, it starts with Dincharya. Very simple, no technology required, no money required. It's just a simple Dincharya that all the children follow. And our children's behavior is extremely good comparatively. I visited more than 500 schools in this country, and I can see the quality of our children as a result of this program. The third program we have is called Svadhyay. Twice a day in school, our children, once in the morning and once in the evening, take a few minutes just to center themselves, get their center cool. As was being discussed again and again, we have to have, just like the eye of a hurricane, greatest power on earth is cool at the center. I'm seeing this Nataraj also dancing. Everything going on, cool at the center. Svadhyay helps our children to be centered. No technology required, no internet connection. They simply have to center, focus, reflect, and it's enough to clear out the gandaki from whatever is building up in their mind. Another program we have is called SOE, Self, Others, Environment. So our children keep a separate copy, and they write down in their copy their experiences apart from school, things that they've learned about themselves, about their friends, their families, or about their environment, different activities. And every morning in their 0 period, for 15 minutes, they discuss their realizations and they talk about it. Again, doesn't cost anything, takes just 15 minutes per day, and all the children are thinking and they're reflecting and building on, apart from the curricular knowledge that's there. The last program we have is a program which is called Ayur School. And it is the first of its kind in the world. As you might know about Jiva, our Ayurveda program, we are spreading Ayurveda through television shows, through clinics, through various programs, through telemedicine. We have the world's largest telemedicine service that's going. But through the Ayur School program, it's an amazing thing. Every child finds out, well, kis tarah ki prakop hai, vat, pitta, or kapha. What's their body type? What's the right food that they should eat? That if I'm kapha, and my body is thoda sa kapha, I gain weight easily. I should be careful of eating too much sweet things, too much milk, too many kinds of heavy products, and I should eat more katta kind of things or mirchi kind of things, because for my body, it's a better thing. But for someone who's pitta, He needs to cut down on those type of things and eat foods that will balance him. This keeps our children healthier. It keeps their immune systems higher. It enables them to concentrate more and have greater memories. And what could be better than that? This is the traditional concept of India. This is what can keep people healthy, and the world is begging for this. In the US, in France, in all of Europe, other places, they're getting amazed by, they never heard about Ayurveda before. They want it for their children. And this is how any school would be able to implement a program like this. Very simple, very easy. So the programs we have, multiple natures, Dincharya Kaniyam, Svadhyay, SOE, and Ayur School are the programs that we're using to create that thing that is necessary to balance dharma, arth, kam, moksha in our schools. We also have a program. We're building a Jiva Center. It'll be a wellness center leaning toward a university in time. We want to bring this knowledge, as we were hearing from Dalai Lama was saying how necessary it is to bring this information throughout the world. We hope that the center we're building will achieve that. And I'll say thank you, and if I could just sing 2 lines, if I may. Hindu sita hamara, हम बुलबुलें हैं इसके, यही गुल सिता हमारा हमारा, सारे जहां से अच्छा, सारे जहां से अच्छा, सारे ही जहां से अच्छा. Thank you very much.
This was extraordinary. I think the central point that I picked up, apart from that very practical 4 trainings that they give to each child, is that their education is centered around the question what a particular child needs. What is his ability? What does he want? So there is no universal template. There is a fixed syllabus and fixed something, and because I once heard Alec G from Goa who said that every plant is, designed to grow, and every child is designed to learn. So learn.
5 minutes for questions.
Yeah, I will. I'll give. But I'll take 2 minutes myself, if you don't mind. You don't get anything in the world unasked. Although I was told, Nachiketa ji, I could use these 2 minutes later, which I will in the evening, but there is a time for everything. I'll just make bullet points about curriculum and education. There was 4 points about Indian education. It's not democratic, it is not Indian, it is not federal, and it is not vernacular. These are 4 important points. It's not democratic, it's not Indian, it's not federal, and it is not vernacular. This has to be corrected. So curriculums have to be designed to correct these things. You have to democratize, which will mean when your textbooks give examples, please don't give examples only from city. And if you want to present a newspaper, don't present only New York Times. And I will many other things, but then this is the example. You Indianize education by creating new disciplines which should be there. For example, in ITIs, all these 64 crafts must find a place. And in the textbooks, extracts or specimen from in every discipline, a portion of the reading material must be Indian. And India has, I think, primary text, grantha. Ours is a textual tradition. You have granthas in every discipline. And you democratize, you sort of federalize it by allowing regional variation in education. Education is a central and state subject. Don't impose. So NCERT and CBSE, they should not be the only ones who are preparing the textbooks. The textbooks have to be prepared at various places and vernacularized. English should not be the medium of instruction even at the highest level. It could be one of the medium. But highest education, professional education, must be made available in as many Indian languages as possible. As many. I don't buy this theory that, how will people communicate, as if we were not communicating before English people came to India. And therefore, these things have to be done. And finally, there has to be a philosophy and a goal. The goal of our education must be time-honored goal of producing virtuous men and not successful men. The world is full of successful people. We want people of virtue. And even my friend Aristotle agrees with me. And as far as the objectives are concerned, you see, mainly we must make Sanskrit part of education because, as Justice Kuldeep Singh, in his remarkable 1994 judgment, Supreme Court judge, and Bhaiya ji and Krishna Gopal ji, I want you to kindly take note of the great contribution that Sardar ji made. He should be honored in a proper way. He did it at the time when Congress rule was there. Milan Banerjee was the Advocate General. Sanskrit was made totally, optional, and it was not being taken. Sanskrit teachers lost their jobs. Kindly read that, kindly see. That man should be honored. He said Sanskrit is not only a language. No, Justice Kuldeep Singh ji. No, Justice Kuldeep Singh. Only Justice Kuldeep Singh, Supreme Court judge. And he said Sanskrit is not only a language, it is the vocabulary of our culture and thought. And therefore, I think these are the things. Sanskrit has to be there, but teach all Indian languages. If you teach only Hindi, you will be antagonizing people. And you build entire India. When we talk of Emperor Ashoka, please talk of Gautami Putra Satkarni also. When we talk of the Guptas and all that, talk of the Cholas and the Cheras also. I think that imbalance has to go. This should be the curriculum. Thank you very much. And now there is 2 minutes. 5 minutes for asking our learned friends anything you would like to ask. Please. Please, sir.
This is Pranam Ammaji. I had the privilege of hearing you, taking you to the schools regarding this value education, Hindu value of education. But it's unfortunately confined to a narrow area. We wish that how it can be brought in a broader sense like YouTube and other things, where throughout the world, not just this country, because I know how amount of work that you have done, but how this to be spread and...
well, thank you very much. Very precisely, the question is there, and you can pass on this too. Yes, please, madam. You can answer from this.
Why my heart is hurted, I don't know. By Paravidya and all other, we are talking each other. Just now I have seen here, this Swadhyayan Ma Pramada.
Right.
Swadhyaya. I am learning till now of 85 of age. And I am looking here, Swadhyaya. I am looking here in Romanization that this is the Dinacharya, not Dinacharya. When we write in Romanized way of Sanskrit or Hindi, we must follow the principles of Romanization. Otherwise, my heart is hurting by this type of looking.
Good point.
Please correct yourself and let me help yourself if I can.
No. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Romanization and, transcription, diacritical, these are problems. They should be taken care of. Thank you very much. Otherwise, Yes, sir. Of course, you know. Yes, please.
Question. I think e-learning, digitalizing the courses, taking the programs, these kinds of educational programs, not only through educational institutions, but going straight into the communities. Really creating a movement is what we are looking at. Not just going into structured institutions, but creating a movement of awareness. This is what the nation requires, and that's really what we are all about to take off in. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other question, please? Just a minute. There's, sir.
I will put only one point. Very illuminating session we have had. Greetings for the same. but at the same time I would request
But
you
we'll give it to you there.
that as Vice Chancellor in the university, I have felt that the syllabi has to be prepared in a particular way in the institutions today. And that is prepared by the academic council and the academic community. Now the academic community has to note that they have to put these things into practice in the syllabi in a practical way. Unfortunately, what is happening is that we are only copying the Western concepts, Western theoreticians, with the result that our youth feels that we have not been that intelligent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We got your point, sir. That these things that these ideas are all very useful. That we have to, reach those people who design the syllabi and the other things. Yes, sir. You wanted to please hear, sir. Please hear.
Actually, a beg pardon to everybody, my seniors, my Hindu. I have some objection. Best to excuse me. Dr. Rudolph is here. What we are saying, what we are following, this is the Hindu धर्म की चर्चा हम कर रहे हैं, कैसे हमारा धर्म में होना चाहिए. हमें कोई एक जवाब दे दे. हमने अपनी नेशन में कहा कि हिंदू धर्म का पुट देते हुए हमें हायर एजुकेशन बनानी है. अगर हम सिर्फ यही करेंगे, दिनचर्या बना दी, और उसमें हम किए स्कूल में, हम खुद कह रहे हैं स्कूल में चुनिए, बच्चों को चुन के लाइए. उसके बाद अगर हम 10%, 5% लोगों को अगर ऑनर्स नहीं देते हैं, रिसर्च में नहीं ले जाते हैं, मैं समझता हूं कि हम अपने कंट्री को बैक कर रहे हैं. ये कहना यहाँ पर कि हम ICT वाली बात आ गई. अगर आपने कहा अगर हमने धर्मों का ज्ञान ले लिया, आज बताइए धर्म हमारे लोगों के पास क्यों नहीं पहुंचे? ICT नहीं है. तो आज हम कहते हैं कि बच्चों को शिक्षा कैसे दें? रोड नहीं है.
Right, sir.
सर एक मिनट मुझे बोलिए. One thing.
We get your 2 points.
Sir, one thing, because you objected ICT,
because nobody objected.
सर एक मिनट मुझे कहने दीजिए, एक मिनट. I have right to say because ICT is such a point. आज हर गांव में फोन है. मेरा मतलब था कि आज मोबाइल फोन पे हमारी एजुकेशन को जाना चाहिए, करिकुलम को उसको बनाइए ओपन, और करिकुलम को इंडियन पुट दीजिए, पर उसमें हाई एंड टेक्नोलॉजी लाइए. नहीं लाएंगे तो हम जो कहते हैं, हम आज सच्चाई मानिए ऐसा नहीं है, तो हमारे लीडर्स क्यों कह रहे हैं स्किल करिए? मतलब एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं चाहिए हमको, हमारे सारे बच्चे एम्प्लॉयबल हो जाएं. तो उसको कहने के लिए
right sir, these points were made by the gentleman who talked about this also. 3 points he has made, and I think we should keep them in mind. The first of all, he said about Dincharya. I think you slightly missed the point. He was not saying that is all the education. He said the people you are going to teach or people who are going to learn, those people also have to be first, brought, what she said, transformation of a person, consciousness. He only meant that. It doesn't mean that you don't teach physics and you don't meet biology and ICT and all that. Please, sir. There's no need to argue. We understand. But that's not the point. That is part of Indian education, what he was suggesting, that you have to prepare the ground before you plant something. You have to prepare the ground, and the ground is the consciousness of the child. And the child has to be brought first, given through. Why Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras? Why does he lay down an entire process before the mind is sharpened enough for acquiring knowledge and learning? And about ICT, nobody has opposed ICT. Nobody has opposed anything. We are only saying there are different perspectives. There are different perspectives. All kind of new knowledge creates new areas of illiteracy. Earlier we used to talk of illiterate, a person who can't read. Now we have computer illiteracy, people who can't use the computer. And you see the kind of training and the skill and the languages and the money you need, that is a problem we only said. We didn't say opposed. I said, how do you provide sites to the people in the remote villages in Northeast where, even the electricity is not there. Batteries cannot be charged. Once your motorcycle fails somewhere, you have to wait for 3 days for somebody to come. So there is a different ways of reaching. Your way is one way, and that's a metropolitan, urban, and technological way. But technology is good, but it is not the only truth. There are many other things. There were different kinds of technologies. A good teacher in the classroom with nothing but the blackboard and the chart and the chalk is a very high level of technology. You see, one single good teacher in the classroom, dedicated, samarpita, with the chalk. He is highest level of technology. What can technology do unless you're in the present? Because the student learns not only information, he looks at the teacher, he sees, he learns how the teacher walks, how he talks, how he's developed, he thinks, what is his manner. That is our Indian way. That is where. That's why Guru, bin Guru gyan kahan se paun. Guru Gobind dau khade kaake lago paye. Balihari Guru apne Govindiyo milaye. तो सर बड़ी बड़ी चीजें हैं. We agree with you. We are not anti-technology.
पर हम क्यों कहते हैं रीओरिएंटेशन ऑफ एजुकेशन हो? हमारे गुरु भी पढ़ें, क्यों कहते हैं?
हमारे गुरु भी पढ़े.
यस, मैं ये कह रहा हूँ, तो गुरु जो पढ़ेंगे नहीं पढ़ेंगे तो कैसे पढ़ाएंगे?